Okay, no intro, no preamble. Let's jump straight into an exciting list of books that are coming our way in 2024. Although I am going to start with authors that I've already read before. Authors that I already love who have new books coming out in 2024. Also, I think it goes without saying that I haven't read any of these books yet, so I'm just going to be going off the blurbs. The first is Julia Armfield, author of Our Wives Under the Sea, and her upcoming novel, Private Rights. It's been raining for a long time now. For so long that the lands have reshaped themselves and the cities have retreated to higher stories. Old places have been lost. Arcane rituals and religions have crept back into practice. Sisters Isla, Irene, and Agnes have not spoken in some time when their estranged father dies. A famous architect, revered for making the New World navigable, he had long cut himself off from public life. They find themselves uncertain of how to grieve his passing, when everything around them seems to be ending anyway. As the sisters came together to clear the grand glass house that is the pinnacle of his legacy, they begin to sense that the magnetic influence of their father lives on through it. Soon, it becomes clear that others have also taken an interest in both his estate and in them, and that perhaps their inheritance may not be theirs alone. Next we have Your Utopia by Bora Chung, translated from the Korean by Anton He. Again, Your Utopia is full of tales of loss and discovery, idealism and dystopia, death and immortality. Yet these stories are suffused with Chung's inimitable wry humour, and surprisingly tender moments too, often between unexpected subjects. Your Utopia is coming out in February, as is this, Not a River by Selva Almada, translated from the Spanish by Annie McDermott. Selva Almada is my favourite Argentinian author, and I am so thrilled to have this book. Three men go out fishing, returning to a favourite spot on the river despite their memories of a terrible accident 3 years earlier. As a long, sultry day passes, they drink and cook and talk and dance and try to overcome the ghosts of their past. But they are outsiders, and this intimate, peculiar moment also puts them at odds with the inhabitants of their watery universe, both human and otherwise. The forest presses close, and violence seems inevitable. But can another tragedy be avoided? Also in the world of horror, we have a brand new short story collection from Eric LaRocca. This brand new collection of 4 stories is called This Skin Was Once Mine. Eric excels at titling his books. And as for that title story, the blurb says, when her father dies under mysterious circumstances, Gillian Finch finds herself grieving the man she idolized while struggling to feel comfortable in the childhood home she was sent away from nearly 20 years ago by her venomous mother. Then, Gillian discovers a dark secret in her family's past. A secret that will threaten to undo everything she has ever known to be true about her beloved father and, more importantly, herself. It's only natural to hurt the things we love most. Another Argentinian author that I truly adore is Mariana Enriquez. I have talked about all of her books on this channel, and we have a new short story collection from her coming out in 2024. It's called A Sunny Place for Shady People. The only problem is, I don't know anything about it, even the translator, so we'll have to wait and see. Then we have The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. Solve the murder to save what's left of the world. Outside the island, there's nothing. The world destroyed by a fog that swept the planet, killing anyone it touched. On the island, it is idyllic. 122 villagers and 3 scientists living in peaceful harmony. The villagers are content to fish, farm, feast, and to obey their nightly curfew to do what they're told by the scientists. Until, to the horror of the islanders, one of their beloved scientists is found brutally stabbed to death. and they learn the murder has triggered a lowering of the security system around the island, the only thing that was keeping the fog at bay. If the murder isn't solved, within 92 hours, the fog will smother the island and everyone in it. I'm also very, very excited to talk about the new novel by S.T. Gibson, author of A Dowry of Blood. The novel is called An Education in Malice, and the blurb says, "Love is sacrifice. One of us was always meant to bleed for the other. Deep in the forgotten hills of Massachusetts stands St. Perpetua's College. Isolated and ancient, it is not a place for timid girls. Here, secrets are currency, ambition is lifeblood, and strange ceremonies welcome students into the fold. On her first day of class, Laura Sheridan is thrust into an intense academic rivalry with the beautiful and enigmatic Carmilla. Together, they are drawn into the confidence of their demanding poetry professor, de La Fontaine, who holds her own dark obsession with Carmilla. But as their rivalry blossoms into something far more delicious, Laura must confront her own strange hungers. This is A Woman of Pleasure by Kyoko Murata. I've never read her before, but I am a big fan of the translator, Juliet Winters Carpenter. The year is 1903, and tenacious and spirited Aoichi is sold to the most exclusive brothel in Kunamoto, Japan, becoming the protege of Shinonome, the oiran, or the highest-ranking courtesan. Through Shinonome's teachings, 15-year-old Ichi begins to understand the intertwined power of sex and money. Education for a courtesan extends beyond the art of seduction, and as Ichi is taught to read and write, she develops a voice that refuses to be dampened by the brothel's rigid hierarchy. Outside the cloistered world of the red light district, rumors of local worker strikes grow, and as the seasons change in Kumamoto, Ichi, Shinonome, and their fellow sex workers begin to wonder how they might redistribute the power and wealth of the brothels among themselves. I'm also very excited to talk about a brand new novel by Chuck Tingle, author of my favourite horror novel, at least of 2023, Camp Damascus. This novel is called Bury Your Gaze, and the blurb says this: Misha knows that chasing success in Hollywood can be hell, but finally, after years of trying to make it, his big moment is here, an Oscar nomination. And the executives at the studio for his long-running streaming series know just the thing to kick his career to the next level. Kill off the gay characters for the algorithm in the upcoming season finale. Misha refuses, but he soon realizes that he's just put a target on his back. And what's worse, monsters from his horror movie days are stalking him and his friends through the hills of Los Angeles. Also coming out in 2024 is the new novel from International Booker Prize-winning Dutch author Lucas Reineveld. The novel is called My Heavenly Favourite. It tells the story of a veterinarian who visits a farm in the Dutch countryside, where he becomes enraptured by his favourite, the farmer's daughter. She hovers on the precipice of adolescence and longs to have a boy's body. The veterinarian seems to be a tantalizing possible path out from the constrictions of her conservative rural life. Narrated after the veterinarian has been punished for his crimes, Reineveld's audacious, profane novel is powered by the paradoxical beauty of its prose, which holds the reader fast to the page. Reineveld refracts the contours of the Lolita story with a kind of perverse glee, taking the reader into otherwise unimaginable spaces, full of pop lyrics, horror novels, the favourite's fantasized conversations with Freud and Hitler, and her dreams of flight and destruction and transcendence. Jesus. We also have a brand new historical novel from Leigh Bardugo. This novel is called The Familiar, and the blurb says, in a shabby house, on a shabby street, in the new capital of Madrid. Lucia Cortado uses scraps of magic to get through her days of endless toil as a scullion. But when her scheming mistress discovers the lump of a servant cowering in the kitchen is actually hiding a talent for little miracles, she demands Lucia use those gifts to better the family's social position. What begins as simple amusement for the bored nobility takes a perilous turn when Lucia garners the notice of Antonio Perez, the disgraced secretary to Spain's king. What has to be one of the most exciting novels of 2024 is the brand new book from Elif Shafak. This novel is called There Are Rivers in the Sea. According to the blurb, The Rivers in the Sea is a rich, sweeping novel set between the 19th century and modern times, about love and loss, memory and erasure, hurt and healing, centered around 3 enchanting characters living on the banks of the River Thames and the River Tigris, their lives all curiously touched by the Epic of Gilgamesh. Something that I am very, very excited to talk about is the fact that my friend, legendary Korean to English translator Anton He, has his debut novel out in 2024, and it's a sci-fi novel. In a near-future world, a new technological therapy is quickly eradicating cancer. The body's cells are entirely replaced with nanites, robot or android cells, which not only cure those affected, but leaves them virtually immortal. Literary researcher Yong-hun teaches an AI how to understand poetry and creates a living, thinking machine he names Panet, meaning beloved, in honor of his husband. When Yong-hun, himself a recipient of nanotherapy, mysteriously vanishes into thin air and then just as suddenly reappears, the event raises disturbing questions. What happened to Yong-hun? And though he's returned, is he really himself anymore? So, I've just mentioned Anton's debut novel, and the fact that he's translated a new Bora Chung collection, but he's also translating something very, very unique and very cool. A Magical Girl Retires by Korean author Park Sol-yeon. This Korean novel is a kind of dedication to the Japanese magical girl manga. 29, depressed, and drowning in credit card debt after losing her job during the pandemic, a millennial woman decides to end her troubles by jumping off Seoul's Mapo Bridge. But her suicide attempt is interrupted by a girl dressed all in white, her guardian angel. Ah Rao is a clairvoyant magical girl on a mission to find the greatest magical girl of all time. And our protagonist just may be that special person. But the young woman's initial excitement turns to frustration when she learns being a magical girl in real life is much different than how it's portrayed in stories. It isn't just destiny. It's work. Magical girls go to job fairs, join trade unions, attend classes. And for this magical girl, there are no special powers and no great perks. And despite being magical, she still battles with low self-esteem. Her magic wand is a credit card which she must use to defeat a terrifying threat that isn't a monster or an intergalactic war. It's global climate change. Because magical girls need to think about sustainability too. Awesome. This is Sister Song by Lucy Holland, a fantastic British historical novel with a transmasculine protagonist. I love this book, and in 2024 we have a brand new Lucy Holland novel. That book is called Song of the Huntress, and the blurb says, Britain, 60 AD. Hoping to save her lover and her land from the Romans, Herla makes a desperate pact with the otherworld king. She becomes Lord of the Hunt, and for centuries she rides, reaping wanderers' souls, until the night she meets a woman on a bloody battlefield, a Saxon queen with ice blue eyes. Queen Ethelberg of Wessex is a proven fighter, but after a battlefield defeat, she finds her husband's court turning against her. Yet King Einar needs Ethel more than ever. The dead kings of Wessex are waking, and Einar must master his bloodline's ancient magic if they're to survive. And this is Parasol Against the Axe, the brand new novel from the legendary Helen Oyeyemi. A once-in-a-lifetime trip, a kaleidoscopic weekend in Prague, complete with moments of philosophical clarity, wheelbarrow rides, raw emotion, and raw onions. Suffused with warmth and joy, Parasol Against the Axe is a love letter to a city and to the art of storytelling. I've been telling myself for a while now that I need to get more into Brazilian literature. And here we have The Dark Side of Skin by Brazilian author Jefferson Tenorio. And this was translated from Portuguese into English by Bruna Dantas Lobato. How do you become the protagonist of your own life? For Pedro, it means searching for his murdered father in the objects he left behind. An archaeology of affections. As he retraces his family's trajectory through the streets of Porto Alegre and the morass of Brazil's pervasive racism, violence, and bankrupt institutions, Jefferson Tenorio takes on fathers and sons, Shakespeare and Cervantes, and the inescapable bond and burdens of family and history in this delicately rendered, painfully precise account of loved ones lost and found. We also have a brand new horror novel from American legend Paul Tremblay. This novel is called Horror Movie, and this is what the blurb says. In June 1993, a group of young guerrilla filmmakers spent 4 weeks making Horror Movie, a notorious, disturbing art house horror flick. The weird part? Only 3 of the film's scenes were ever released to the public, but Horror Movie has nevertheless grown a rabid fanbase. 3 decades later, Hollywood is pushing for a big budget reboot. The man who played the Thin Kid is the only surviving cast member. He remembers all too well the secrets buried within the original screenplay, the bizarre events of the filming, and the dangerous crossed lines on set that resulted in tragedy. As memories flood back, the boundaries between reality and film, past and present, start to blur. But he's going to help make that film, even if it means navigating a world of cynical producers, egomaniacal directors, and surreal fan conventions. Demons of the past be damned. But at what cost? I am very, very excited to read this new Japanese memoir, Rental Person Who Does Nothing. This was written by Shoji Morimoto and translated by Don Notting. And the blurb says, Shoji Morimoto provides a fascinating service to the lonely and socially anxious. After an old boss told him that he contributed nothing and that it made no difference whether he showed up to work or not, he wondered if a person who does nothing could still have a place in the world. With a tweet, his rental person service was born. Have a deep secret that you desperately need to reveal? So deep that you can't tell a friend or family member? Have you spent a long time home alone and want to know what it's like to have somebody with you at your apartment? Or for someone to simply think of you on a stressful day? Or wave to you as you leave the train station on a long journey? Morimoto is dependable, non-judgmental, and committed to remaining a stranger throughout each request. And his encounters are revelatory about both Japanese society and human psychology. I cannot wait to read this one. Another Japanese novel I am very, very excited about is Butter by Asako Yuzuki. Unfortunately, the US publisher has done its absolute best to hide who the translator of this book is, but I'm pretty sure it's Polly Barton. And the blurb says this: there are 2 things that I simply cannot tolerate: feminists and margarine. Gourmet cook Manako Kaji sits in Tokyo Detention Center, convicted of the serial murders of lonely businessmen whom she is said to have seduced with her delicious home cooking. The case has captured the nation's imagination, but Kaji refuses to speak with the press, entertaining no visitors. That is until journalist Rika Machida writes a letter asking for her recipe for beef stew and Kaji can't resist writing back. Rika, the only woman in her news office, works late each night, rarely cooking more than ramen. As the visits unfold between her and the steely Kaji, they are closer to a masterclass in food than journalistic research. Rika hopes the gastronomic exchange will help her soften Kaji, but it seems that she might be the only one changing. With each meal she eats, something is awakening in her body. Might she and Kaji have more in common than she once thought? Also in 2024, we have the brand new memoir by Brontes Purnell, published in the UK by Cypher Press. Brontes Purnell's 100 Boyfriends was an incredible collection of stories, and I can't wait to read this memoir. In 10 Bridges I've Burnt, Brontes Purnell, the bard of the underloved and underlooked, turns his gaze inward, a storyteller with a musical eye for the absurdity of his own existence. He is peerless in his ability to find the levity within the stormiest of crises. Awesome! Another Japanese novel I am very, very excited about, and it's coming real soon, is Cannibals by Shinya Tanaka. This was translated into English by Kalua Almany and published by my friends Honford Star. During the hot, dry summer of 1988, in a forgotten neighborhood known as the Riverside, 17-year-old Shinogaki Toma is entangled in a desperate struggle against what he believes to be his fate to become his sadistic father. Consumed by a fear that he will harm his girlfriend, Toma's downward spiral into depression and instability becomes increasingly intense. Toma's mother left his father long ago and now lives nearby as a fishmonger. Using the hook that replaced the hand that she lost during wartime bombings, she guts the eels Toma catches in the sewage-filled river for his father to eat. Things come to a head when Kotoko, his father's live-in girlfriend, becomes pregnant and makes the decision to leave the Riverside for a better life. Wow! Published in the UK by Tilted Axis Press is a brand new queer novel from South Korea. This is DDs Umbrella, written by Hwang Jun-gun and translated by Lee Ye-won. And the blurb says, D, a non-binary gig worker living in Seoul, briefly escapes the grasp of isolation when they meet Didi, only to be ensnared by grief when Didi dies in a car accident. Meanwhile, the world around them reckons with the 2014 seawall ferry disaster that left more than 300 dead. As formally inventive as it is evocative, DD's Umbrella is composed of twin novellas. The first is told from the perspective of D, and the second from the perspective of a writer researching a book they may never write. Both figures dwell in society's margins, queer, working class, and part of non-traditional family structures. As people across Korea come together to protest the government's handling of the seawall ferry disaster and to impeach the right-wing president in office, the novel examines how progressive movements coexist with social exclusion, particularly of women and sexual minorities, invisibilized in service of the greater cause. DD's Umbrella is a meditative and off-center novel about mourning and revolution. Whew! This video is so long I had to change the battery on my camera. Next up we have a Spanish novel, Bad Habit by Alana S. Portero, translated into English by Mara Faye Leatham. And the blurb says, an unnamed young trans woman grows up in a working-class suburb that has no place for her. She discovers community and kinship in downtown Madrid, amid a lively party scene animated by junkies, pop divas, and fallen angels. With each step she takes forward, she finds herself confronted by a violence she does not yet know how to counter. In this thrilling and often terrifying world, each choice can be truly a matter of life and death. And finally, we have Mongrel by Hanako Footman. This is a book I really don't know anything about. I just saw a few whispers about it on Instagram and I'm pretty excited. The blurb says, May loses her Japanese mother at the age of 6. Growing up in suburban Surrey, she yearns to fit in, suppressing not only her heritage, but her growing desire for her best friend Fran. Yuki leaves the Japanese countryside to pursue her dream of becoming a concert violinist in London. Far from home and in an unfamiliar city, she finds herself caught up in the charms of her older teacher. Haruka attempts to navigate Tokyo's nightlife and all of its many vices, working as a hostess in the city's sex district. She grieves a mother who hid so many secrets from her, until finally one of those secrets comes to light. That one sounds awesome. I'm really excited to read that. And that was, I think, 25 books for you to check out in 2024, and obviously I'm going to be checking them all out as well. I cannot wait. My next video will be about my personal reading goals in 2024 and a bunch of other stuff as well. Look forward to that. Support me on Patreon if you'd like to give me a lovely Christmas present, and subscribe for books.